Welcome to another one in the series of events we do mostly in this room here at the Phoenix Park Hotel with the New Politics Institute. I'm Simon Rosenberg. I'm the president of NDN, and I help start NPI, which is an affiliate of NDN's. And we've really got, I think, a very timely and exciting event today. As many of you know, the New Politics Institute was set up 2 years ago to really look at, in a very strategic manner, the great media transformation that's happening in the country today, the great changes in demography, and as a way of looking at politics as a think tank, right, in the way that we look at policy. Because our basic premise is that, politics is changing so much that we needed to take a step back and think about the way our politics were emerging and the parts of politics that we all are common to all of what we do on the progressive side as we do about policy, right? And that's really been the intent of NPI since it was started. And I think this is another one in a great series of events for all of you. And if you want to get, any of you watching at home, our website is newpolitics.net, and certainly check it out where you can see lots of papers and video and lots of resources to help you better understand what's happening in the changing world of politics in the United States today. And it's my great pleasure now to introduce the director of the New Politics Institute, our great leader, the guy who's thinking up so many big and important thoughts and has done so much, I think, to animate and bring life to this thing called NPI, which was a very good idea, which I think has now become a very powerful organization. Pete Leyden. Welcome, Pete.
Thank you. Well, thanks, Simon, for the intro, and also thank Simon. Simon was really one of the first people in Washington to really understand the big changes in technology and media that were really disrupting the old politics and bringing on the new, and he was the founder of the New Politics Institute, and he's been a great partner going forward here in the last couple of years. Well, one of the things we're going to do today, we take off every once in a while in a very specific kind of area, is we're going to start talking about, I'm going to walk you over here, I hope the TV folks will go with me here, because we're going to be talking about the exploding world of political web video. And we say it that way because, indeed, we are really in an explosive kind of period right here. The amount of new innovations coming up, the amount of new players that are coming forward, it's very confusing for a lot of people, it's very kind of exciting for a lot of people. But there's a point here where we're trying to actually help the political world here in DC try to understand what's really going on out there. And what we've done is, in fact, we're going to do some framing here. I'm going to do some framing, and then we're going to put together an incredible panel here of really the pioneers and innovators in this field that can actually lay out some of the ways to actually deal with this in politics today. Now, one way we've kind of used in the past to talk about this is a lot of people in politics kind of understand what a big disruption television, broadcast television was to politics literally 40 years ago. And there's some vague analogies to what happened in the internet. I mean, television in the 50s was this goofy kind of medium, but by the early 60s, you saw this explosion of innovation in politics. And where we were using them in the televised debates, we were trying to innovate now in what at that time was a minute-long ads, the classic daisy ad where the little girl was plucking the daisy flower, and then it went into a mushroom cloud, and Lyndon Johnson's voice went in there and freaked out the whole American public on if Goldwater gets into power there, what's going to happen. And then, of course, we saw how television was actually to bring us right into these massive kind of people-powered events of that time. Now, this explosive innovation, this wasn't like obvious that this is how you were going to use television. So there was all kinds of things that we forget about that actually was going on at that time that actually just fell by the wayside, didn't work. The way to think about what's going on now with the internet and with the web is that we're in a very similar time of explosive innovation. There will be a shakeout, there will be a kind of regularization of how you do politics in this environment, and over the next cycle or two, we're going to actually see how that emerges. And once that emerges, it'll probably lock in as the way you do politics for a very long time, similar to what we did with around the television world. Now, one way to understand why is this happening now, and this is useful to think because it helps you think strategically out the next 5 years here. This is a chart we've been using a lot. And the way to think about it is there's two booms in the internet booms. And we are in the second boom, which is the broadband boom. And the broadband boom is the boom that allows you to do motion media, television, web video on it. There was a lot of people in the 90s here, this is from 90 to 2000, when they tried it in the low bandwidth internet, there were attempts to do video on the web. They were largely unsuccessful. Because the only media that could really work in that low bandwidth was anything to do with text. So all the newspapers and everybody in that environment, those media sectors, did get sucked onto the web, were disrupted by the internet. It took broadband to get over at least a third of all American homes and 50% of all businesses till we really started to see the profound kind of shakeup of the higher bandwidth media. And the first to get hit was music, which is why all those kids with Napster would send in the audio files. But ultimately, in the fall of 2005 is the way I would mark it, is when television started its massive migration to the web. Motion media, web video really began. And that was the beginning of YouTube and the rest. And what ultimately, though, is just like in the 90s and the mid-90s, if you looked ahead at that migration, that inevitability of that, we're in the same place today. We're in the middle of this decade. Just assume that this migration of all this media is moving in that direction. Start strategizing rapidly today. That's what's happening in the Valley right now, which is why we're having a huge boom in this video space. In fact, it's almost getting overheated. They're thinking there might be a second crash is going to start building up if we don't watch it. But in politics, just assume this is happening. Start strategizing now. Now, just to give you a sense of the power of this, we were going to have the guy from YouTube, actually, who's doing the politics section of YouTube, was going to be here with us through video conferencing. And just to show you how kind of disruptive this whole thing is and how crazy it was, we actually were going to link in through video conferencing to have him come in from the Valley to talk to us, but we just couldn't get through the firewall of this hotel. And so he's sitting stranded in San Francisco right now. But this is it. Early days. Eventually, we'll be able to do that very seamlessly. But anyhow, this is just something to put it in context. These are the numbers for YouTube. YouTube did not exist in 2004. They only were incorporated in 2005. And by late 2005, there was 5 million videos watched a day. It is now, by the last fall, but it's still it's similar today, roughly in the same space, 100 million video streams a day are going off of YouTube. 100 million. Every single day. That doesn't mean individual users, but because some people might see 3 or 4 of them. Also, there's people from around the world. But that is an amazingly huge audience. And so what you can start to say is YouTube and other sites like this have cracked how to do television on the web. Now, the flip side is, who bought them? Google bought them. Why did Google buy them? Because Google has figured out how to advertise on the web. And here's just some numbers of Google, just to put it in context. Google last year made $10 billion in advertising revenue on their search ads. $10 billion. If they stay at this growth rate, which is expected, they will essentially this year surpass the ad revenue of all the broadcast television networks combined. That's the kind of size of shift that's going on in ad spend right now. And so once you can figure out how to do a new medium like web video on the web through YouTube and others, and once you figure out how to make money on the web through advertising like YouTube, you put those together and you've got a very viable medium. And this has arrived. That's why web video is here today and it is here to stay. Now, we've seen how politics has started to adapt to it. And this was the first thing that really, there's been all kinds of experimental new things that happened. But this one, I think, is the one that really kicked and got people's attention. Last cycle, the 2006 cycle, where George Allen was actually caught in a kind of impromptu moment there, saying something that others, some people thought was an offensive comment, a racially offensive comment. Well, this thing essentially went out through YouTube, as everybody in politics knows, and in fact, it really had a serious impact on his campaign. We can debate how big an impact, but clearly it actually had something on disrupting a juggernaut of a campaign at that point. Now, we've also seen positive uses of this. So that's kind of the classic negative. And it's funny in these new mediums, often the negative is the first thing that really goes. Like the mushroom cloud daisy ad, that's like, the world's biggest negative ad ever, right? Vote for this guy and you're all going to die. And this, but it's the same thing. There's the new ads, often the first things that come out are these kind of negative ways to do it, which is the macaca ad. On the other hand, we're watching a wave of innovation, particularly in the presidentials now, where we've had announcements, presidential announcements coming online. Obama, Richardson, Edwards, others. We've also seen kind of new innovation here about how to use it more interactively. In fact, we've got one of the speakers here who's going to talk about, he was actually involved in actually producing this and talking about how you can actually do that now. And anyhow, there's been very, very interesting innovation across the board of the presidentials. Well, in fact, there's been so much innovation that Dan Manatt here, who's the founder and executive producer of PoliticsTV and a very good friend and colleague of mine, we were looking at this after a while here, and we said in the early part of this year, we thought, you know what, we've got to actually just start to categorize all the different kinds of ways that politics is starting to use this web video. And we came up with a dozen categories that we started to talk about, and we made, in fact, what else? A kind of web video of all these different categories and took some of the select best examples and put it together in about a 20-minute run. And each little category itself kind of runs as about a minute and a half, 2-minute kind of deal. Now, we're not going to show that to you today, but if you go to the New Politics site, you can actually look through that and walk you through these categories. But I will just kind of give you kind of a way to frame it before we turn this over to the folks here, our panelists. One is you've got one category, say the side, there's a cluster of categories that are essentially campaigns that are starting to evolve their campaign strategies into the web. And that's why we started to see announcement videos come out. Now, why would you do an announcement video there? In the past, in the old politics, you had to hold a press conference. You had to hope to heck the broadcast stations or the local station TV would come. They would grab one little snippet, maybe 30 seconds if you were lucky. It would be basically put out into the medium by some snide reporter who was probably going to tell you that, this guy's bound to lose, but he announced. And it was really kind of a controlled environment that was like really hard to deal with. In this environment, you can put out a 2-minute, 4-minute video. You can say whatever you want to say. People can all your supporters can come to it and see it unadulterated. The media still has to take it to kind of take their little snippet for the evening news. And in fact, people can come back again and again and again. There's all these kind of superior ways to actually deal with it. Another category is we're starting to see how Hollywood actors, particularly in the progressive circles, because they're very progressive, they're starting to actually get involved with doing these kind of mini little videos. For example, like Will Ferrell's classic one of imitating George Bush in the 2004 campaign. There's a wave of these going to start to come. There's another one we call campaign video blogs. Just like we've got text-based bloggers now, has been going around for the last few years following campaigns. Now we're going to start to see these video cameras are just going to be ubiquitous through these campaigns. You're going to start to see behind the scenes or the kind of informal moments or on the bus or wherever the different backstage on the campaign stop. That's actually going to come out. It's already coming out, a lot of these. Video chats, we're going to be talking about that, but like Hillary's example of how you're starting to interact through video with live audiences. Right now it's through text-based kind of responses from people, but ultimately that could easily be done, although not that easily since our YouTube experiment broke down here. But we'll be able to kind of do that through two-way video chats. And ultimately this thing is about events that live on. I mean, normally you think about when people organize, they put all this effort into a local event, right, for a campaign or something. And the local people come and maybe or maybe not to get covered, and it's kind of that's it. Well, if you have video there from your campaign or from your supporters, these things last for months and months and months, and people from all over the country can take part. Again, another category that's happening. The second big area, and this is the last kind of cluster we're going to talk about here, is a different kind of video that we really haven't seen before. And this is essentially those that are rooted in user-generated, bottom-up, kind of the more out-of-control video that is not within the purview of campaigns. That's not within the control of traditional political campaigns. And these, in fact, in some respects, are among the most popular, the most powerful, and ultimately the most kind of interesting for politics to have to understand how to do. And again, we've got someone who's going to talk to us about that a little bit later today. And so some of the ways we think about that, they're starting to see contests, user-generated contests where people, they say, hey, a bunch of supporters come together, try to put together your little commercials, and we have a little contest to get the best to rise to the top. Move on, innovated in that space. We're going to see a lot more of that. Gotcha videos, that macaca thing, you're going to see ubiquity of people covering the candidates, catching them in odd moments. This is a thing that we're going to see a lot more of. Opposition research videos. We've got Greenwald has come up with, there's a very great one, and again, I don't have the time to kind of go into all these sidetracks here, but he actually caught McCain talking about how easily it was going to be done to kind of roll through Iraq and actually solve this roll in quick time, which is they got living forever in video from about 4 years ago. And they juxtaposed it dramatically with his statements now about how he always knew it was long and hard and it was going to be an extremely difficult thing to get out of this war. And it kind of just shows you, boom, right in front of everybody, and then virally travels over the web. Oppo research. Flash animation. This is essentially not really video in the same way, but it's essentially cartoons. These are essentially a software that allows you to do things like through animation that you couldn't do through just filming real people, even real actors or real campaign people. And this is like Jib Jab, the old classic one where you saw the Bush and Kerry singing "This Land Is My Land," that kind of thing. You're going to see a lot of that. This is, again, very easy to do at some level for those that know. And ultimately, you're going to see all these television clips like the Colbert Correspondents Club, or ads like Michael J. Fox's ad in support of stem cell research that would have been, seen by a smaller group or in some kind of circumscribed audience. But now with the web, they can go boom. They can go all over the world. They can come to again and again and again. They can gather all this kind of energy behind it. Those are going to go crazy. And ultimately, there's a final category here called what we're calling web features. And this is a more longer category that will actually be able to allow you to do 5-minute, 10-minute, longer pieces, not full documentaries, but that'll actually give you some depth and some deep kind of way you can get these a little bit with more depth. One of the ones I love the best here is a group in Berkeley actually did a documentary from the future, 2050, in which they looked back. They filmed as though they were in the future. They looked back on how we solved climate change. And in 5 minutes, walked through the steps the American public and the American Congress did to actually do this. Very, very powerful thing. It takes 5 minutes, but it's quite worth seeing. Anyhow, all of these different categories have all kinds of examples in them. If we had more time, we'd go into that. But this is just a way to kind of tell you that this is exploding across all these categories, all kinds of new people involved in this. And to make sense of this, we've got 4 terrific, real pioneers in this space. And I'm going to introduce each one before they come up to talk. And so instead of going through the whole crew here, I'm going to start off with Phil Vellis here. Phil is one of the people that actually... Yeah. We didn't know Phil at first, but we knew him through this video that appeared, the famous rematch, as they say, a mashup of a 1984 ad, an Apple ad in the early 80s there. Or, yeah, 1984, Apple came out with their great ad on introducing the Macintosh. And he essentially used it as a mashup. A mashup is a category which we didn't mention here, in which you basically take content that is in one environment and repurpose it for another. In music, it's remixes. You take a different kind of musical people, put a different beat behind it, and it becomes something very new musically. There's a similar thing in video. You take different kind of images from one purpose and repurpose them for a different purpose. He did that with this, and in fact, at first we didn't know who did it. He was kind of anonymous, and it was a lot of intrigue. Now, eventually, we understood it as Phil. It's been viewed more than 4 million times on YouTube. It's been all through the networks and everything else. People know about Phil. Phil has now since, in fact, in the rough and tumble changing world of this space, he just yesterday has taken a job with one of the really top media firms here in D.C., and he'll be the Vice President of New Media?
Yeah.
Vice President of New Media, and maybe you can talk about his new job as well. Actually, introducing Phil Vellis.
Great, thank you. Well, thanks, great introduction. Thank you for having me. New Politics Institute does a great job of understanding and studying and explaining these things. I just kind of mess around with a computer and come up with stuff. But I think a lot of what Peter said is really true. I'll just tell a little bit about myself, and then I have a few video clips to show the examples. More than anybody else, I'm surprised at how big this exploded. And I think part of the reason is people are really interested in YouTube. They're really interested in this campaign. And with the technology now, it's just really easy to share video clips, whether it's somebody posting it on their website, a news organization giving a link, or just through email. You know, just about a year ago, if you wanted to send a video around, you'd have to send a real player file or a Windows file. You wouldn't have the right program. It would be a total pain. Now everybody, you know, your friends, your mother, your grandmother can all open them up. So the video I did was a mashup, which, I don't know, how many people here are familiar with that form of stuff? Okay, fair. Before I did my thing, were people familiar with it? Not so much. Okay, so a lot of people were wondering, what is this thing? And the reason why I chose the form is I came up with the idea really quickly, and then one Sunday afternoon, I did it in my apartment on my laptop using Final Cut Pro. Now, editing is one part of the equation, and that is out there on every computer. There's some form of editing, video editing software. But finding good source footage is hard. You know, I'd have to go out and shoot something, get actors, have expensive equipment. The cool thing about mashups is they allow you to deliver a very sophisticated message just by pulling different clips together and doing something. So the first clip I'm going to show is a mashup of Brokeback Mountain and Back to the Future. It's Break Back to the Future. And this is just to show, this was done maybe a year ago or so. And just to show that I am not the inventor of this genre at all, that it was around and it was used for entertainment purposes. Okay. Play. Okay, here we go.
From the future. I came here in a time machine that you invented.
This so-called Dr. Brown is dangerous. He's a real nutcase. You hang around with him, you're going to end up in big trouble.
Oh, yes, sir.
Well, this goes on for another minute or so. I think you guys get the idea. So I'd seen a bunch of these. You know, they also had one with the movie The Shining, which was a horror movie, and they remade it into a romantic comedy. You know, so I just thought that whole art form was hilarious. And also, Michael Moore did a great one in Fahrenheit 9/11 where he did a mashup of Bonanza and the war in Afghanistan. So you can see I was inspired by a few things. Now the challenge for me is that I'm public is, how do you repeat this even on a much smaller scale? It was really easy for me in a way just to be sitting there in my living room and figuring out what I want to do on my own. There are no constraints. So now how do I work with campaigns and organizations to try and get some of that buzz? Well, I was lucky enough to actually have a chance a little while ago. I worked with a group called the Vaz.org, and they were doing a campaign to get Paul Wolfowitz fired from the World Bank. So I try to repeat a similar thing. It's not as edgy as the clip you guys know me for, but I came with this idea of mashing up the show The Office with the Paul Wolfowitz scandal. So I'll show you about a minute of this here.
Actually, just so I understand, raise your hand if you're bank staff. Okay, that's what I thought. Most of you, I assume, read the...
So that kind of gives you a flavor. You can find it online. So, again, that was an interesting thing, working with a lot of different people in the organization and trying to get something out there. I came up with the idea on a Wednesday night with them, and then Tuesday night. Worked on it on a Wednesday and a Thursday, and then we thought we were up against the clock because there was a meeting of the World Bank on Friday. I think this was 2 weeks ago, and I naively thought that Paul Wolfowitz was going to get fired, that he would just resign. Of course, he didn't. He's still hanging on. So we were rushing to get it out. So that was kind of interesting, and it's kind of a viral project that's in process right now. There's about 110,000 views. A lot of workers at the World Bank passed it around. A lot of people that are interested not just in politics, that were interested in The Office, looked at it as well. And that's another reason why I think mashups are kind of interesting, is because of my first piece, you got people that are interested in not only politics, Hillary Clinton, Obama, but also Apple computers, YouTube, and now here with this, you have a hit sitcom. So I think that's one measure, that's one way campaigns can reach out to people, is to blend popular culture into their work. So there you go. This thing right now is there. It's getting passed around. It could take off more. It could just kind of stay where it is. I know the market for Wolfowitz isn't as big as for the presidential campaign. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of give you guys a little bit of overview of what I did, and hopefully answer some questions in a little bit.
Thanks, Phil. What we're going to do is we're going to be doing this. Laying out everybody here, and then we're going to open it up, as is the part of the medium, is to open up to everybody's questions, insights from out there. A lot of you people probably have as good insights, if not better, than us, and it'd be great to have a good conversation after this. And again, Phil, being modest, he's at Murphy Putnam Media. He's going to basically be doing a lot more work in politics, and we're going to see a lot more of his stuff coming up here. That's great. The next is going to be Dan Manatt. I'm going to intro Dan briefly because he was the partner in that overview of the web video environment. But Dan has been really involved in this space since 1999. I don't know if you even dated it earlier, but certainly 1999 is when I think he really started to actually get his head into this. If there's anybody around, particularly in the Netroots space, because he's been doing a lot with the Netroots, but in general, through politics in general, it's been Dan in this space. And he's here to give us a lot of the insights into this space, but also to talk to you about just how easy this is to do. Dan?
Thank you, Pete. Yes, 99, and Jeff and I were working a little bit together on freedomchannel.com. Arguably, other pioneers in this room, C-SPAN, of course, was probably the first place I saw political web video in 97 or 98, so it's good to have pioneers here, and for the rest of you, where you been? The first video blog I did was I posted from Hazard County, Kentucky, Ben Chandler's gubernatorial run in '03, and when you got to an Appalachian county with broadband, I realized we were getting there. So it's been interesting to see how the culture has taken a while to catch up with the technology. But I'm not here to talk about the meta. I'm here, Pete's marching orders are, I'm here to talk about the nuts and bolts. So let's get to the nuts and bolts. Get to my piece here.
Do you want the clicker, Dan?
I'm sorry?
Do you want the wireless clicker through on the PowerPoint?
I'm not sure. I'm worried about screwing that up.
Okay,
So
all right.
I'm just gonna stay back here. Just quickly on PoliticsTV.com, I've been consulting in this space since '03. I worked on FreedomChannel.com, 99, 2000. Just as Pete said, it was a little ahead of the curve. So I went back to the policy world. That particular website disbanded. And in '03 started consulting for clients. And yet the clients were not really pushing their content out there. So we started PoliticsTV.com a year ago to aggregate video content. And a funny thing happened on the way to becoming a video site, and that is YouTube came along. So now we put all of our content on YouTube. We just crossed the 2 million mark as far as videos viewed on YouTube, but we also maintain the site. This is a weekly show we have called the PTV Top 10, where it's kind of like, I'm told it's a mix of, I was shooting for ESPN's Top 10 Plays of the Week. I'm told it's a little more like VH1's The Best Week Ever. But essentially, we're just going out there and looking for the best political web videos of the week and throw them up there in a compilation. And so if you want to track what's going on in the space, that's one place to do it. One more sort of meta comment here. Orson Welles said, and this is a bit of a paraphrase, but the filmmaker, unlike the painter, unlike the sculptor, etc., is the only artist, and of course he was talking back in the 40s, I believe, said, the filmmaker is the only artist who cannot afford the tools of his craft. Back when making a real movie cost a lot of money, a lot of money, and you really needed a studio. Well, here's my corollary, and that is that citizens, unlike a campaign, a candidate, an interest group, also could not afford the tools of political communication during the TV politics era. Cutting a spot, getting it out in any sort of way that anybody would see anything, and with the exception of certain local campaigns, any sort of major federal campaign, etc., the TV ad was sort of the touchstone of a campaign. So citizens could not afford the key communication type used by a campaign until now. Using a little icon from from Park Ridge 47. We didn't introduce him by his nom de guerre, but that as he is better known.
I'd argue with that. Am I better known by Park Ridge 47? Maybe.
So, and what do I mean by that? Let me put it even more concretely with a little web video economics 101. A DV camera such as this, Canon low-end DV camera that nonetheless shoots perfectly good video, and if you learn how to actually use the focus and so forth, can shoot even professional-looking video, has fallen in price to $250. A MacBook. The basic one now is just around $1,000. Editing software, iMovie, that comes on the MacBook is free. Comes with the machine. A YouTube account where you can broadcast all this, also free. And if we can get some sound here. I guess we don't have sound.
And the real world of Virginia.
The next Macaca Moment.
So welcome, let's give a welcome to Macaca.
The importance of these videos cannot be underestimated. In all seriousness, in the case of the Macaca video, and Mike Liddell, who was running the DSCC's online operations at the time, probably has the greatest expertise in this, can tell us, but it was literally the cost of a slightly more expensive camera, I believe $600. But given all of the money that was spent on those Virginia ads, and pretty much everybody in this room would have seen the millions of dollars of ads we saw on that, I think we all know, given the closeness of that race, came down to the $600 spent on one of these cameras. So literally, with the exception of the tape and so forth, that $1,250 is all you need to do, all you need to spend to go into the web video business. At the basic level, not some of the software Phil used, not the high-end stuff that Jeff can provide you with, not necessarily the access that Karina and I need to produce some of the congressional content we do, but nonetheless, it puts you in the barrier to entry, the entry point is that low. So then, the final thing I want to do here today is if that's the economics 101, I very quickly want to demystify, the same way hopefully I demystified the money piece, demystify the mechanics of how does one get the video from here up into the internet, wherever that is, and streaming worldwide onto your laptop. Now this is going to be real basic for a lot of you all, but for some of the rest of you, I think you know, it's the whole how does the genie in a box make this all happen. Well, I'm going to show you. Let me turn my camera on here. And I guess escape out from there. Scroll to Final Cut. Okay, the first thing one has to do is get a little video. So, I'm capturing this video. What you're seeing here is actually an editing interface from Apple's very popular editing software, Final Cut Pro. This is a capture screen. And what I'm about to do is capture just a few seconds of video. Here, I'm going to zoom in on my colleague, David Grossman. David, wave to the crowd. There you go. And now we'll escape out of that. Okay. So now we have some video. There is our video. Let's get that action shot of David again. There we go. He rolls his eyes like that at least 12 times a day. So, okay. At this point, so we've got it in the machine. What do we do now? We export it, and actually we are going to simultaneously convert this into a small-sized file. I'm actually, just for speed's sake, actually going to do this at the highest rate on the desktop. And that's going to take just a few seconds. So while that's happening, I'm going to start getting ready to put this on YouTube. And once you're on YouTube, you can, are you logged in? Is anybody here? To upload a video to YouTube is real easy. You just log in, give it a title, give it a description, and then give it tags or categories. So in this case, web video, NPI, whatever. Go down, you give it a video category, in this case news and politics. You click on continue uploading. At this point, it wants a file. Well, we've already encoded our file, so I'm going to browse, look at my desktop like you would if you're just sending a document across town. There is our file. I select it. I upload the video. And it's already uploaded. Now it will take probably, the one variable in this process is, especially depending on the size of the clip, it can take anywhere from 5 minutes to 5 hours for YouTube to process the video, because largely it's a question of geography. If you, here on the East Coast, upload a video at 9 a.m., it'll go up like that because people are just waking up. If you wait till, say, 8 p.m. and all the West Coasters, you know, the arty hipsters on the left coast with Pete are uploading their magnum opus documentary that's 2 hours long, which of course you can't do on YouTube, but never mind that. That actually slows down their servers worldwide, and it will process more slowly. But here, maybe next time I get up for a question, I will look. But you can see right there, right here, is our video. It's going to be up in just a few minutes. It's processing, and that is how you upload a video to YouTube. So those are the ABCs. Happy to talk more about the, obviously there's incredible detail. This is kind of like saying that I've just taught you mathematics when I just taught you how to add 1 and 1. And it is interesting because even as we do a lot of training at PoliticsTV, our consulting unit has a Apple certified trainer, and we do train folks. But one reason that Jeff's never going to go out of business, one reason that Phil's never going to be out of the job, one reason that I'm never going to be out of the job is, as easy as it is, by analogy, taking a still photograph is easy, and yet I would guess that half of you all in this room still manage to get your finger in front of the lens or cut off people at the head or what have you. So doing good, high quality work is still a professional craft. It will, but one that can be acquired like other professional craft by enough study by folks. But so that's Web Video 101, and look forward to questions. Also looking forward to hearing what these guys have to say.
Thanks, Dan. He's been, and again, we're going to have a lot of time here to do some questions. The next person we're going to talk to here is, if these guys are kind of talking about the craft, how easy it is to do, at the same time as they mentioned, with great skill, it takes more. Yeah. The next two panelists are about how, although actually there's a little overlap with Jeff here, but it's going to be thinking about how are actually both campaigns starting to think about this, and also how our elected officials and government starting to do with this, and how do we actually start moving this into the real stuff of our business, the real stuff of campaigning, the real stuff of government. And so the next speaker up is going to be Jeff Weingarten, and he's the president of Interface Media Group, and this is one of the, again, the shops in town that has been keeping up to the constantly changing media ecology that's been happening over and over and over. And I think you've been there since the late 80s, but now he's the president, and he has been involved. He's going to talk a little bit about some of his work with the presidential campaigns, and also some of the private sector innovators and where it's going next. Jeff?
Okay, thanks, Pete. All righty. Well, we've been we're a post house, a production company, and we've been doing political advertising for 30 years. Actually, it's been almost to the day, 30 years ago, that we started. After the 76 election, Tom Angel, our founder, got together and decided that folks like Bob Squire and Doug Bailey needed a place to take film, which at that time it was all film, and take that film and get it into videotape and find a way to massage that and turn that into commercials. So since then it changed quite a bit, as we've just heard. But what was really interesting in the past 30 years is to watch how film then, it was small, and then we turned it into video, and we had to bicycle it around to actually get it to station as to what happened with distribution. And the next crazy thing was FedEx, which was all the spots. We then started FedExing them all over the country, which has then transitioned into DG, which is electronic delivery. So we're delivering the spots electronically to all the stations. And who we work with is we work with the consultants. So the consultants come in, pretty much the majority of the consultants in the city are our clients, and we work with them to craft their message. So we have basically two real focuses. One is what I call the artistic creative focus, and the other is the technology. And we're kind of focusing on the technology here today. But the artistic part of the craft is actually equally important, which is what is the message, how do you edit it? You have audio folks who pick the music that's going to go with it, compose, etc. You have the editors, which Phil's doing a mashup, but you also have folks who are trying to tell that story. So the technology side is the other real interesting part for today, which is what we do is we're out there searching. We're out there finding what the next technology is and how can we introduce it to our clients, who then in turn introduce it to the campaigns, which they use to actually reach the voters. And so in that respect, what has been happening now with this explosion of the web is that the ability to reach an audience has dramatically changed. And the mashup is a prime example of that. Jib Jab is a great example. But the other thing that's happening is also webcasting. And now candidates are actually going out and they're reaching out to their to the audience directly through a webcast. And the webcast has a bunch of beauties to it, if I can get this thing to work here.
Aaron, do you want to?
But the, so most recently, someone fix this for me, is is what we did is we worked, we have a studio. So the studio's downtown, and we've been doing these webcasts for folks like the Clinton campaign, for Steve Case, who launched Revolution Health last week. And so what we want to do here is just kind of show you some of the beauties of that. Are you can get out of what all Dan's got going on here.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's okay. Is two things happen. One is you get to register the people who are going to be watching that webcast. So to watch that cast, you actually get to sign up. So here's an example of that right here from the Hillary webcast, which is to watch it, the information went out, and then you were able to, you signed up. So when you were done, the campaign not only had your email address, it had where you live and all that good information, so they can now take advantage of that, which is to get you involved, to solicit funds, to send you more information, to send you the link to the latest piece of video that they're going to produce. And that's kind of what's happening for us with consultants, is we're producing maybe, it could be 2,000, 3,000 individually different spots in a campaign. And of those spots, then we're making multiple copies and sending those out. So now what you have the ability to do is to create a spot, take that spot, and then feed it to your audience. Also, you're able to publish it. So you can publish it to YouTube. You can publish it to your own site. And if you're publishing it to your own site, then the question becomes, how do you drive traffic? So which is, how do you get these new viewers that you want to see to the site to watch this work that you've just created? So then you get into what we're calling search engine optimization, which is these tags that you saw Dan put on the clip he just uploaded. He put in, New Politics Institute, but the tag could be for the Apple computer spot. It could be Apple. So suddenly everyone who's a Mac fanatic, like all of us up here, they're going to be interested in viewing that. And so you're able to then start driving an audience. And a large part of the marketing, which the private sector has been doing for quite some time, which is just now making it over into the campaigns, is how to actually use those tools on the web, that come with the web, e-marketing, viral advertising, use that to drive these people to the site, so now you're exposing them to your message. So there's a couple things that come out of that, one of which, so here we had this, let me just show you the actual cast here if I can find it. Yeah, here we go. So in this particular case, Hillary came in, it was in our studio, and should start playing. Maybe not. Perhaps not. And so she's talking from our studio. So the studio's in downtown D.C., and she's reaching out through this webcast to folks everywhere, and it's not coming up. Let's try refreshing that. Anyway, let's try one more time. Try this one. So here's Steve Case's, which we did last week, where in this particular instance, what you do is he's speaking from over on Connecticut Avenue at his office, and then you're driving alongside that. Off to the right here, as you see these slides. And the slides, what they're doing is showing his website, which is now being launched. So you can do the same thing with the campaign, which is while that's going on, in addition to the information that you want to present, you're seeing the person talking, you're also driving this information here, which you can feed, or it can be questions from the audience, so then you get this interaction between the user, the viewer, and the person who's actually speaking. So this has been, become a huge technique for us. And in addition, what's happening is it's very possible now people are talking about actually having a presidential debate using that technology, and perhaps having that debate with the candidates in different locations. I don't know why that one's not playing. So what do you have happening there now? So now what you have is the ability to reach an audience through the web that you weren't able to do before. And then in addition now, it starts to become a digital rights management issue. So we start talking about being able to mash up, but is the campaign daring enough to actually take all the raw footage that you're creating when you make these commercials and actually put it in a repository where user-generated content could be created from that? Similar to where GM did those ads, which kind of got out of control, where they were having people make the ads for their trucks and then turned around and became part of the environmental movement. So those are the issues that we're kind of fighting with there. But that's, that's all there and ready for you to use. The other thing that's real interesting right now is there's two real types of things happening on the web. There's the website and the video, and which we're calling traditional web video. And then there's what really is IPTV, which is television transformed over onto the internet, which is the computer crawling inside your television, and you're at home now watching from your computer as opposed to from your cable set-top box. But you're getting the information through your computer, but you're able to watch it on your screen. So the way that's working is, that you are able to, you have people like Juice. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Juice. The Juice is the Skype folks and the Kazaa people. So what they've done is they're now into a peer-to-peer file sharing network. And what they're doing is we're now feeding, in addition to doing politics, we also do films and regular commercials and corporate work and lots of other things, is we're formatting existing shows for them to use. So they're taking these shows, let's say it's a half-hour National Geographic documentary, and we're going in and we're putting in a, right here, and we're putting in a second of black. So it used to be a commercial break. Now you've reformatted the show to 1 second of black. Now what's the big deal about that? These guys are then going to be able to play that back and you're going to be able to watch that show. But what happens is, just like Google now is making all that money through being able to optimize the ads that are on the right-hand side of the screen when you're watching. So the ads are optimized to your preferences as you're browsing the web. So if you're a rock climber, you're going to start seeing ads for North Face, and you're going to start seeing ads for hiking boots, whatever, on the right-hand side of the screen. Well, what's going to happen with folks like Juiced is that you're going to be watching this television show, which is going to feel like television, which is going to show up on your screen at home, but actually they're going to have your user preferences from actually browsing on the web. So when that 1 second of black comes up, they're going to now play an ad, a commercial that is based upon your preferences, stuff that they know that you might be interested in. And they're going to be able to track that. So they're now able to then cater that advertising towards what your interests are, and they're able then to do that. So really the challenge is how do political consultants, how do campaigns now take advantage of this type of technology so that you have a targeted audience, you have or you're trying to expand the audience you want to get to, you now have this demographic data. I mean, pollsters love this stuff. So you're able to then, you're on the internet, you can see who's watching your ad, where they're from, what the IP address is, and then take that and utilize that information now to customize the message that you're sending. So what we're doing is working to develop these technologies and find ways to take advantage of them so our clients and consultants can use them to get those campaigns further on. So, well, more questions in a minute, and off we go.
Terrific, Jeff. Thank you.
Yep.
The final speaker here today is someone who, if you don't know her, you should know her. She's Karina Newton. She is the Director of New Media for the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi's office. And Karina has been with the Speaker for a while, been with Pelosi for a while, but what she's actually been in the front lip of is really understanding how do you start applying these new technologies, among them web video, to actually governing now that we're in as the Democrats are now in power. And she's been really leading a lot of the changes there. And the Speaker herself has taken a real commitment to this. I've been incredibly impressed at how much you guys have really moved the ball in terms of the use of these new technologies in the governing of the country. So she's going to talk about that. Karina.
So Pete always has these fantastic PowerPoint presentations that I can never compete with, so I didn't try. Have to apologize for that. But what I thought we'd do is kind of give an overview of what's been done. And really, YouTube was the thing that changed it for us, because it gave us the ability to have an audience that we could reach that wasn't just on our website. So basically, we would be able to put video out there, and people wouldn't necessarily have to know how to find us, because I don't know how many of you have visited your congressperson's website, but most likely you haven't unless you work in the field. So we started a YouTube account about a year ago, and I think we were actually the first official member of Congress to do that, and that was with when the Speaker was leader. And Jack Kingston, representative Republican, big message person on the Republican side, started a YouTube account a day later. So I think we count as about the same time in terms of pioneers. And what I wanted to show here is it's really rapidly increasing. Leader Boehner started a site this year. Roy Blunt, Barbara Lee, Ed and Labor Committee just last week, and Rep. Earl Pomeroy has been our most recent House of Representatives addition to YouTube, and there are many other throughout that. But I think pretty much by the end of this year, most members of Congress are going to be utilizing this in some way. The speaker's website has, YouTube site has, I believe, almost 500 videos. So the next kind of question that we come to is, what's worth putting on YouTube? Who wants to watch what? And, what is of value? So what we've kind of found is, I'm going to give you guys 3 examples. This is a video of a government and oversight hearing where there was a GSA administrator that came to testify. This is Rep. Barney Frank talking about a motion to recommit. And this is Patrick Murphy offering a moment of silence on the House floor. What do you think had the most clicks? Okay. All right. Patrick Murphy here. Now, mind you, this is a video of silence. This had about 10,000 hits. And this was essentially, this was on the 4-year anniversary.
Because today marks the 4-year anniversary of the war in Iraq. I'd like to offer a moment of silence to the 19 members of my unit that did not make it home from Iraq, and for the thousands of brave Americans that have fallen. On this somber occasion, we must commit.
So then he finishes, and then there is the moment of silence that everybody observed. Then this one is Barney Frank, and what was the guess? A bunch of people had him. Okay. So this is Barney Frank
Gentleman
on.
from Massachusetts recognized for 5 minutes.
This was 2 weeks ago.
Mr. Speaker, never has the willingness of the minority to abuse the process for purely political ends been clearer than today. Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker. Does whining come out of my time?
And this is the
how many hits?
I'll hit you 1 second. This is the GSA hearing.
I'm a little bit embarrassed to admit this, but I can say that I honestly don't have a recollection of the presentation at all.
Well, I assume that given your past experience, you've sat through PowerPoint presentations before.
I have sat through
and that during PowerPoint presentations, information is projected in slides, and usually those slides are reviewed by the person making the presentation to reinforce verbally the visual images that are displayed on the slides.
Oftentimes they
Is that your general understanding of what took place on this date?
Yes, I believe that is true. I believe there were PowerPoint slides, and I believe Scott Jennings did speak.
The committee has...
Now you'll notice this video is 10 minutes. There's nothing innately funny about the video other than it's 10 minutes long, essentially trying to comprehend what's in this PowerPoint presentation at an official GSA hearing. So this was seen almost 100,000 times off of our YouTube account. The Barney Frank video, which was again on a motion to recommit, which is somewhat of an arcane process for most people, was seen nearly 50,000 times. And Rep. Patrick Murphy's moment of silence, recognizing the 4-year anniversary of the war, I believe was at about 12 to 13,000. So it's kind of an interesting thing, and they all serve different purposes. Essentially, let's see. This is kind of how we use web video in Congress right now. So I think those give an example of where we are. There's Rep. Murphy, partially I think was a documentation. It was essentially, this is what's going on in Congress this day. Congress recognizes that 4 years of war has taken a toll. And that this is something to say, where are we going? We need a new direction in Iraq. But it was also a moment where we could put something on YouTube and show people, and then people could also embed that video on their blogs, et cetera, that this is a universal experience, that Congress isn't just in Washington. It's not a chamber you can't reach. This is a shared experience. And then with Mr. Waxman's hearings, there was a piece that's coming out in this week's Newsweek, which I think is essentially explains the popularity. He says, last week, for instance, Waxman's House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform heard startling testimony about how the Army lied repeatedly to protect its image, covered up those lies, then lied again. Instead of depressing me, the hearings left me strangely exhilarated. And we've put up a lot of the hearings from Oversight on our YouTube site, and it really is, you know, you're going through, you know, Pat Tillman's brother testified last week and Jessica Lynch, and there are these ways in which transparency and accountability is occurring in this Congress that has really been absent for many, many years. And so being able to have YouTube and videos as a forum to show the Democrats bringing back accountability and transparency. There's no more transparent moment than putting something on the internet. It's there. So it's really where the message and the media meet incredibly. And on Rep. Frank, he's hilarious. You know, he doesn't say a thing that comes out of his mouth that's not funny. But he also highlighted hypocrisy in a way that people could understand the legislative process and what Republicans are doing with their motion to recommit. So it was a way to take something that wouldn't really be understandable to a way where you could understand where both Democrats and Republicans are coming from. So the other kind of ways that we do web video, communicating with constituents, and that's really a member of Congress's primary job, is to talk to the people who they represent. And Rep. George Miller just did this for the first time last week, and I'm told that they're going to be improving their technical and editing skills. But just to give you a little bit of taste, it's essentially a mashup of his week. And he takes an interview and then matches it with things that have happened on the floor. So he basically walks you through the week.
Once again, the Congress went on record to stop the war in Iraq.
The American people recognized President Bush's approach in Iraq for what it is, a failure. That's why we sent a message to Washington this past November to change the course, to end this war, to get out of Iraq. That's what the American people said in November.
And he goes on to the next day. So he kind of goes through, you know, public events that have been videotaped and then matches it with his views and response to it. And then we have the transparency and accountability, which is really a lot of the oversight work that is going on in the hearings. Then an important thing, and this is predominantly how our office uses it in addition to working on web video, is rapid response, because really the ability to frame the message before MSNBC does or before Fox News does is really important, especially on the internet. So this is an example from yesterday, actually. We were anticipating the president's veto. We knew that the speaker was going to sign the bill and send it to him. And so that morning we had 1 minute on the House floor. And so about 20 members of Congress stood up and basically said, this is what we should be doing. The president should not veto this bill. We produced it, it went on YouTube, it also went up on Daily Kos on the front page. And all it is a video that we put together in literally 45 minutes of the different speakers on the floor.
Madam Speaker, 1,460 days ago, we had lost 139 troops, brave men and women, in Iraq. 1,460 days later, Sergeant Michael Hollander from my district, from Little Falls, New Jersey, died on Saturday when an IED detonated near his patrol. He's one of 3,214 more troops that have died since supposedly major operations would cease.
And today, Congress will send President Bush and
so it continues on that. And this is an example of also how the same material can be framed in different ways. Daily Kos posts it saying House Dems take to the floor on Quagmire Accomplish Day, whereas the way we frame it would obviously be a little bit different. And this was the blog post on our blog, The Gavel, that we did, and it's, you know, House Democrats on the floor. It's very, you know, very, very plain. The other element is floor activity. And in the rapid response realm. And this was from last year, and Mr. Gohmert essentially said that if Mr. Murtha was around, we would all be speaking German.
Some have not had nice things to say about our colleague, Mr. Murtha, and others wanting to pull out of Iraq quickly. But I understand the faithful visitation that he does routinely. So I say thank God for his big heart. I say thank God for his compassion. Thank God for his visits to the wounded. Thank God for his ministering to grieving families. But thank God he was not here and prevailed after the bloodbaths at Normandy and in the Pacific, or we would be here speaking Japanese or German. Thank you.
Gentleman's time's expired.
Now, Mr. Murtha is on the floor at the time.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania.
I yield myself 1 minute.
Gentleman's right.
I asked the Speaker, was the gentleman at either of those locations? Was the gentleman either at Normandy or any of those locations?
Gentlemen, you want to know which locations?
Yeah.
Normandy was a horrible bloodbath.
I say, were you there?
Oh, no, I wasn't.
Were you in Vietnam?
No, sir, I wasn't.
Were you in Iraq?
No. Oh, I've been over there. I haven't been fighting.
Boots on the ground?
And I do admire the gentleman's compassion, and I do appreciate all that he has done for our wounded. He has done a great service, and that would be you, Mr. Murtha. Thank you for your work.
I yield.
So that was seen about 100,000 times, and that was really in the midst of the debate when Republicans were calling us, you know, terrorist coddlers and defeatists, and Mr. Murtha took a lead on saying we must bring this war to an end. So it was a moment where you could kind of capture something that personified what was going on. So I'm going to go through the last things really quickly because I have 1 minute. Another element is the positive element, which is advancing priorities. Oops. We have well, I guess that's not coming up. We have the innovation agenda. It's great when you see the smart technical people having technical difficulties. There we go. We have the innovation agenda, which is basically a democratic agenda to promote innovation and science. And along with essentially having the agenda up on the website, we also have a YouTube video of the innovation agenda and members of Congress speaking on it. So essentially what we try and do is everything that we have in writing, we also try and have in video. Everybody likes their material different ways, and we want to have it as accessible as possible to everyone. And the last element is reaching new audiences and really utilizing that, and that's where I think you'll see the future of where Congress is going. Mr. Pomeroy just started a MySpace page. It's called Earl Jam. And along with him riding on a horse, he also has a YouTube video saying, hey, I'm here new to YouTube and MySpace. He's 54 years old. And one thing that you'll see is there was a piece in his local paper yesterday that said, Pomeroy is quoted as saying, everything I know I learned from staffers under the age of 25. So the Hill is starting to utilize the talent, and one thing we'll never have a shortage of on the Hill is interns and young staffers. So I think they're kind of leading the way to bringing this technology to the forefront. And just one last thing, too, is we have rules, obviously, on the official side where we don't, we can't really solicit anything. We can't ask for anything. It's our job to use the taxpayer money wisely to just communicate what we're doing. But there have been some creative ways of trying to get some interaction between members of Congress and constituents, and I think you'll also see more of this. And one last example is the 30-something members. The Speaker has a 30-something working group where members of Congress, in the 30-ish range, Mr. Meeks now I believe at 39, so I don't know what's going to happen. It might be 40-something members soon. They had this giant rubber stamp that we built, and they would go on the floor every night, about the rubber stamp Congress. And this was the 109th Congress, was the rubber stamp Congress, where the Congress just rubber stamped everything Bush did. And so they realized when we took over the majority, what are they going to do with this giant rubber stamp? So we recorded a video of him, and he is asking folks what he should do with the rubber stamp.
I'm Congressman Kendrick Meek. I represent Miami, Florida, here in the Congress. I'm a part of the new Democrat. majority here in the U.S. House of Representatives.
It's basically him and the rubber stamp.
Wanted to thank you on behalf of the 30-something working group, especially to our loyal C-SPAN.
And he goes into that, but I want to show you a little clip of another. There was a series of 3, and so, you know, they did the first video where they were introducing that they needed to get rid of the rubber stamp. And then the second one was him asking people on the street.
To what we have.
Hi, I'm Congressman Kendrick Meek again from the 17th
So he basically walks around the Capitol asking people what they should do.
Democratic
but it was one of
the
I think we'll be seeing more of this where members of Congress use video to ask folks what they should be doing and then report back in video form. So it's a continual dialogue. All right, that's my, my fancy PowerPoint presentation.
I think that far outdid the fancy PowerPoint demos. That was terrific, and showing the real medium for itself, and that's terrific. Now, we've had great presentations across the way, but really the thing is to get a dialogue going here, and if people have to slip out to work, we understand that, but we'd love to hear from people comments, or for that matter, questions, and the folks out there want to talk. Go ahead. Yeah, we're going to try to get this, since it's on being filmed on C-SPAN, among other places, you want to get it in the mic. So wait for the mic when it comes to you.
I just had a question for you. I'm on the Senate side, and I was wondering about the House rules as far as using YouTube. I haven't, checked into it on the Senate side, but I was under the impression that we weren't able to do that. Do you know, or do you have any recommendations about finding out that?
I would talk to, I know the Senate rules are different, and I think the Sergeant of Arms controls your side with the Rules Committee, so I'd ask them. I don't know. I do know that Senator Grassley has been one of the most creative users of video on that side. He does a weekly streaming video, but he does that off of his website.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Who's watching?
Who's watching? Anybody want to talk directly about that?
Well, one key group that's watching, other than activists and supporters, is the media. One amazing thing to watch is how, for a long time, when you produce these web videos, a lot of people say, "Oh, the quality's lousy, nobody will watch it," and but now, I think a day doesn't go by when we don't see CNN, MS, or Fox, or somebody do a story where the video is actually a capture of something that's happening on the web. In other words, YouTube has become a video PR newswire, where you can push your story out and have a decent chance of getting, well, not a decent chance, but may get your video picked up by broadcast. Phil knows a little something about that. In fact, thanks to Phil, that was the first time I think PoliticsTV got on CNN because Phil was good enough to give us his first on-camera interview along with YouTube. So that the fact that the media is watching and using online video is a huge, huge piece of this. And I think, in fact, in the future, well, in the present actually, you'll be seeing a lot of this content that's going up on the web for watching can also be sent by fiber or what have you as a video press release. That's actually how what Jeff was talking about, how they feed out ads by a fiber network and so forth. So media is a key audience.
I mean, the other thing is it lives on forever. I mean, you have a niche audience. The whole long tail concept is before you had the whole head of the curve where you had everybody and you had, what cable basically is, or broadcast television before cable. But now with smaller niche audiences, you can keep that content out there for a longer time and actually reach people and make it relevant.
Do you want to just explain a little bit about the long tail for people who don't explain?
Sure. I mean, real roughly, the concept is that at one time you were limited in what your viewing options were. I mean, at one time there were 4 networks, but now there can be, and you had to aggregate advertising dollars to make that profitable for it to work. But now, for instance, if like my daughter plays field hockey, and you never really would have had a field hockey channel, but with the with the internet now, you could actually aggregate an audience of field hockey advocates who are really interested in watching that, and it actually can be profitable because you're able to take that content and now reach that audience that you'd never be able to reach before.
Just one more thought on on the audiences, you never know who the audience is going to be. I think, Karina, that was part of your point with the GSA hearings going so big. On our YouTube channel, I think our second biggest video, David, was a video we did at the Heritage Foundation. And we are a progressive-leaning channel, and yet we went to cover the Heritage Foundation, and it's gotten 250,000 views. And lots of those are, the majority of those are conservatives.
47 minutes long.
Yeah, and we would not have guessed that. We did a video recently, our Top 10 show, where we made reference to Tony Blair and Labour UK doing Labour Vision on YouTube. And I made reference to the first time a head of state is doing a regular thing, and somebody in Britain, corrected me and said, no, the Queen is head of state. Tony Blair is just his minister, and I could hear Helen Mirren. So you never know. It's really amazing where your audience pops up.
I think part of it for us too is we obviously want to have it out there to show what we're doing, but you find new audiences based on what you put out. I mean, we do a podcast from some of the speakers' audio files, and she referenced the Rolling Stones once because she was going to watch a Rolling Stones concert. And that podcast, even though it was with regards to, I think, the budget, ended up being downloaded far too much because it had the Rolling Stones tagging. So that's another element that we didn't really talk about, but the tagging on YouTube videos and the tagging of your sites is incredibly important in terms of people being able to find your...
Does everyone? Do you want to just say a bit more about the tagging, or do you want someone else wants to say? Because I don't know if that's totally clear what that.
Yeah, I could say something a little bit. Yeah, well,
the magic of what you're looking for there.
Yeah, well, actually, I think on YouTube it's not as developed yet as it is just because the way that you tag on there, you can only have single words. It's really important, I think, like on blogs, like with Daily Kos, there's some certain tags. I worked at an organization, Walmart Watch. It was a watchdog group. So the way you'd find people blogging on Walmart on Daily Kos is if they use that tag. I think the tagging will be more important with videos. It's actually kind of hard to search on YouTube right now, but I think they're working on that, and I'll make it better. Now you really just find videos by seeing it posted on blogs, or if it happens to wind up on the most popular list.
But it's just a little category. It's just a little descriptor and category that you put in there that then allows people to find your video.
But it's worth noting, I'm just saying, is that it isn't like there's only 10 categories and you click on the one. You actually can create whatever tag you want. And so part of the art of getting picked up by people who you don't expect to is to think, well, what is something in that video that might draw somebody else's interest? And so there's a kind of art to tagging, which is something I think people have to start thinking about. Yeah?
Just to follow up on that, if you go to Technorati or something, and you search on Technorati, they search by tags often. So, if you have a popular tag, or if you're really good at tagging, you catch a broader audience. When people go to Technorati to find the blogs that speak to their particular issue they're interested in, if you have good tags, it'll pop up more. So,
Will?
Yeah, I saw online that Facebook is the #1 photo site in the world, and I'm wondering what you guys think the interplay is going to be between these social networking sites in this video.
I could say real quick. I think it's very important. That's a really great way to start stuff. Facebook has got a great stream that comes up, so you can put a link to a video, has a little screen cap of it, and then all your friends see that you've just linked to this video. And that was one of the early things for the Vote Different ad, is some people just saw it and they put it on their stream there. So I think that's really important. I really don't understand MySpace as well, but that's a huge 800-pound gorilla. A lot more viewers on there, probably more influential people on Facebook. But yeah, social networks are a huge way to spread things.
It's also going to be interesting to see how YouTube continues to try to build out their social networking. And that's a lot of what Steve Grove clearly is trying to do with You Choose, and they're building the communities and so forth. So that's certainly going to be an interesting place to watch social network, what a video social network looks like.
Do we need to walk through that in a little different? I mean, people are familiar with how the social networks work. You're already aggregating a bunch of friends or people that you're connected to, and you just get the videos in those slipstreams, so it goes through those networks. Another question? Yeah, go ahead.
How do campaigns and organizations overcome copyright laws with mashups?
Ooh. Oh. I think that's a really interesting question, and it's a lot easier. I mean, when I did the Wolfowitz video, I talked to Avaz and I said, you know, we might hear something from NBC, and they say, oh, that's okay. We think we'll deal with that. But with campaigns, you'll be even more resistant to it. Political speech is strongly protected, and you could fight over it. But you know, if you're a campaign and you don't have resources, it's hard to fight over it. I would hope soon that there are some clear guidelines. I think both those videos, I think, were close to the line, but we're on the right side of the line. Yeah, for a campaign, you're probably going to see more 527s doing stuff like that than you'd actually see actual campaigns doing it.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It was really, really illuminating. I just was wondering, well, two things. Can you tell us about the PC? Because I know you all work with Macs, but can you tell us how, you know, the best software to do this kind of thing on a PC? And then just to follow up what she said, I mean, general use of logos, video clips, images that are content that are possibly proprietary to someone else, for you know, a single individual citizen to do this, what kinds of dangers or legal issues do we need to be aware of?
I think, Karina, it is true that I'll just say, just as a brief thing, is that a lot of people who are dealing with web video do use Macs, partly because they've been so well designed to actually interact with video and multimedia. On the other hand, there is a whole slew in PC environment, and Karina, I know, is a PC person.
Well, the government's PC. But we have there's a thing called Windows Movie Maker, which is free and comes, and it's essentially like the Mac free software as well, where you can dump things in. So if you're working with small content and not doing anything terribly fancy, it gives you all the tools you need. And Final Cut is also available for PCs, I believe now.
No, I don't know. Well, Avid, there's a free Avid.
It's the Avid accompaniment.
Adobe Premiere.
And Adobe Premiere is another, and I think Adobe Premiere is in the $400 range, so it's not terribly expensive. But I think on the public domain copyright issues.
Well, on the copyright stuff, it's important to note that the whole YouTube issues of late really don't reflect a change in copyright law per se. That YouTube has its own licensing deal, and they have their own issues as to how they want to deal with Viacom and CBS and so forth. I have yet to hear an individual getting pinched over fair use. I'm sure it's happened and so forth, but especially in the political realm, if you're taking small amounts of video, I mean, one would need to if you really want to cover yourself, consult with an attorney. But and Will would be the expert here, actually. But when you're doing a campaign ad or what have you, you're pretty safely within fair use.
Although one of the only things that they can knock, one of the only things they can use to knock an ad off the air, the First Amendment, is copyright. It's just, it trumps everything.
Right. Yes, sir.
What I was saying is that in the protected speech category, one of the only times there's no appeal on an ad being taken off the air by a station is when you have a copyright violation. So on the old school traditional media side, we take great pains, but you know, First Amendment, go for it, but I think you need to be careful.
That's great. Will is a media consultant who's got a lot of experience in this. Simon, do you want to answer to that exact thing? Wait. Okay. And our people over here got their hands up, because I feel, okay, if there's people over here, we'll get over there. You see some. Go ahead.
As for the panel, is that, you know, it's interesting now when you see video of some of the events on C-SPAN of the presidential early events, you're seeing a lot of people in the front rows and stuff with their cameras on their cell phone cameras taking video of the events. And, you know, in essence now in politics, there's a camera on you all the time in the audience, right? Essentially, because many cell phones now have video capacity on them. How is this going to affect the whole web video revolution? How, for those of us in the business who are protecting politicians, does it mean that every moment now in every public event or even every private event where people could be recording something surreptitiously, is there no such thing as an off-the-record moment now in politics, and what does this mean, you know, for what we do every day?
Senator Obama, I was actually going to bring the clip in at the DNC, in his speech to the DNC's winter meeting. started off by saying, you know, with all the cameras and so forth these days, running for president feels like a mix of American Idol and Survivor. No, I think you absolutely, if I were running for office, I would assume a camera is on me at all times, with the possible exception of sort of like when you walk into, what is it, the president walks into the safe room or where you have the white noise, that there would be certain security areas. But absolutely, you have to, I mean, Will, haven't you been using your... Taping it. Right. Yeah, he's been taping us with his phone right there, and frankly, they're great hidden cameras you can get for $600, so absolutely, you've got to... Survivor is definitely right.
Well, other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was going to say that, you know, I think when more of this comes out, people are not going to be so surprised. You know, Edward's combing his hair. I mean, big deal. There's always embarrassing pictures you can find of yourselves, and I think for each of these candidates, it's a rite of passage that they go through, and people won't make as big a deal out of them. But, you know, there's also the positive side of them. You know, a lot of politicians are very, you know, controlled and careful. Maybe somebody might capture a really nice moment, and you get to see them, you know, in a new light. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing.
I think we recently had our first kind of official item of that happen, where a woman came in and videotaped Representative Obi, and that made the YouTube circle, and that was kind of the first time there was a confrontation within, and a lot of the anti-war protesters are using it extremely effectively. And I'd say they're some of the more interesting uses. Code Pink is recording things. So I think we'll see how Congress responds, or how individual politicians.
I mean, you have the ability to broadcast it now yourself, so it's out there. I mean, you have to expect it to be seen by everyone.
I do think, if I could just make a comment, and Simon, as usual, puts his finger on kind of one of the kind of evolving, unclear spaces that have got to get worked out. I mean, we are in a period of a really evolving, not just technologies, but norms and practices and standards and all kinds of things that are going through. And I think there's going to be a point, as Phil said, I think there's something about the seeing candidates as more human, and understanding that, you know what, if you make a mistake, you come right back and say, you know, that was dumb, I'm sorry, you know, I'll do something different. And I think there's a tolerance out there too. That's, you know, if the old standard was you're so highly scripted that if you screw up, well, then you should be held to it. You know, in this new standard where it's so loose, and, you know, everyone has private moments and unguarded moments, and you're angry or whatever, you're tired and you say something stupid, I think people get that. And so I do think there's going to be a new tolerance evolving towards those kind of slips. Yeah, in the back. Sorry. Go ahead, Seth.
I also wanted to thank you. It is a fantastic presentation. I think Dan's was best, but that's because I wanted him to put me on PoliticsTV. So, what I wanted to ask, it would seem to me that as this evolves, and it's an unbelievable revolution, I would think that it would have to change, or that maybe it would change, how much advertising there is on television. And if that were the case, then the amount of money you'd have to spend on advertising would be so much lower, and you could use the campaign dollars for something else, or not have to, it wouldn't be as expensive. And just wonder what your thoughts are on that.
I think it's really interesting. I mean, they're definitely tracking the advertising dollars moving from television over to the internet. At the same time, there's an awful big audience watching American Idol. So it's really a fine line between where are you going to be able to reach the people and what dollars you're willing to spend to do it. I mean, it's funny, on the cab ride over here, I was talking to a fellow, and he was telling me, I said, hey, so are you interested in politics, or what do your kids do? Oh, my kids love animals, and they're always on the Discovery website, and they're always watching about animals. I said, well, what about politics? And he goes, actually, I'm starting to do that now. You know, so he was moving in that direction. I said, well, do you watch television? He goes, no, we just watch videos. I thought that was kind of interesting to hear, that he wasn't a television watcher, that he was getting his information from the web, and that was where he actually, you know, was trying to find the information. That's where he would watch a political ad.
Well, and you can mute the television.
True. Yeah.
One thing I was going to bring in, I'm sorry, Jeff.
No, I mean, it is that whole lean back versus lean forward dynamic, which is when you're watching television, you're leaning back and you're passive, and when you're on the web, you're leaning forward and you're engaged. And that's definitely a different relationship with your media and how you respond to it.
One thing I was going to bring in, and Sash, you know, wherever, whenever you want to be. I was going to bring in the new Apple TV, which isn't taking off quite like the iPod, but then again, the iPod didn't take off quite like people remember. It took a little time, which is kind of Apple's answer to the TiVo, where you can download any video podcast, shows, so forth. So like Hotline TV, which we produce for National Journal. you can actually download that and watch it in HD full quality. You know, the video on demand world is here. Now
can you explain Apple TV just a little bit?
Sure. I mean, Apple TV is it's very similar to TiVo, or I mean, a lot of folks here have Comcast On Demand, and that's essentially what it is. Except that rather than working through the TV, you start off working through iTunes, pick shows you want to download. Once it's downloaded, you then just use a remote to throw it to your TV box. So the convergence, the long talked about convergence of the internet and TV is happening slowly, slowly, slowly. It'll take a while to merge, and certain demographics will be early adopters and adopt faster than others. But I mean, there's no question that will have a big impact. MPI's talked a lot about the TiVoization of politics and what that means. Now that said, I think it goes to Pete's presentation, that the Google guys are going to figure out how to make people watch some ads as part of these videos. You're seeing the short TV ads, the 10-second pre-rolls and so forth. They're being inserted now in ads, and if it's. But I also think there's going to be the bigger market for the bio spots that Jeff's shop and Phil's now will put together. So it'll be a new creature, but it won't be so radically different from the politics we have now.
I think there's also one other thing kind of on that. There's a new site, Ustream. Have you guys been on it? Ustream is essentially YouTube, but for live action, and it requires the same tools that Dan was demonstrating, a $300 camcorder. And essentially it takes everything that's happening live and streams it onto the internet. So people can produce their own TV shows. People could also produce their own ads for it. And I assume that once it leaves its beta phase, you know, people are going to be looking to advertise on it. And I wouldn't be surprised if campaigns started doing webcasts from it of their events, other things like that.
I mean, the Juiced I was talking about earlier, which is the Skype guys, they've already lined up Coca-Cola, Nike. These are all major advertisers who have come on board and partnered with them. So they're there for that technology. And that technology is one step above what we call DV Res. So it's good-looking video, and it'll be out there very shortly.
I just want to jump real quick on the advertising thing on YouTube. I don't think you can underestimate the difficulty that they're going to face. I think that they're probably the smartest guys to figure it out. But what's going to happen is if there's a pre-roll clip, 10-second clip, it's kind of annoying. You know, you see something come up for some gum or something like that, and you go, well, you know, instead of uploading my video to YouTube, I'll use Blip TV or I'll use Brightcover. There's a ton of them out there. So I'm really interested to see if they're able to pull it off. I hope that they do in some ways, because I think advertising is important, and you need to have a way to pay for it. But it's a real big challenge.
It's just worth reiterating that point that we've been talking a lot about YouTube just because it's in everybody's mind's eye, but as Phil rightly points out, there's all kinds of these sites. And in fact, some of the ones that were shown, I noticed, were coming off of Bright Cove and others. You can see, you can tell there's a little bit of an interface difference that if you're familiar with them, you know which ones they're coming off of. But by no means just don't think this is a big advertisement for YouTube. Now, I know in the back there, I know we got to wind out here, and I know people want to go. Let's take a few more questions because I think there seems to be interest. If you have to go, slip. If not, we'll be ending very shortly. Go ahead.
That last conversation was actually most of it was a perfect segue into my question. It was primarily for you, Jeff. So there's all this data that's going to be accumulated on users,
right?
Especially through things like the Juice thing you were talking about, which is peer-to-peer file sharing. The possibilities for how that could relate to voter files and things like that are real.
I'm sorry, say that again?
The possibilities with using that information and how it could relate to voter files are pretty significant. It's very valuable information. Has anything been happening with coordination about that? Has anything been happening where even thinking about this has gone forward at all? And how long will it take for something like Juice to really go mainstream, where the majority of internet users will be using the internet for most of their TV and everything?
You know, honestly, I wish I had the answer to that, because if I had the answer to that, then I would know where to put my money. But it is happening. The convergence of the set-top box, which is kind of what we're talking about, which is, are you TiVoing it, or are you using Apple TV to do that? You know, quality is a funny thing. I mean, I love the stuff on my computer. When I played Apple TV and just put it on my LCD screen, I wasn't happy with the quality. whereas when I do it on my television set, I was perfectly fine with it. So, I mean, you kind of asked two questions, is when will that type of, when will juice be mainstream? I think it's going to be over a period of a couple years. The fact that all of the networks are now coming to us and asking us to reformat their shows, because they're trying to monetize their libraries, says that there's going to be a big push in that direction, and I think that'll be shorter than we think.
So do you own that data then?
Would Juiced own that data, or?
Juiced, right.
I don't know the answer.
But quickly on the sort of video marketplace piece of your question, that is, there is going to be, if YouTube was the first big bang in this space, the second big bang is going to happen this summer, when NBC and News Corp launch their new venture that some folks tongue-in-cheek called NewTube, where they're launching their answer to YouTube when their negotiations with YouTube broke down. They decided they're going to form their own company. So, and they have everybody. They have AOL, they have MTV, I think. So you are going to have sort of the media conglomerate web video company, and they are going to be monetizing it and running pre-rolls right out of the box. That's going to change the landscape dramatically overnight this summer.
I mean, there still is a bandwidth issue on the internet. There's no doubt about it. In terms of actually getting something that streams at a large enough size that you'll sit in your living room and watch it on a large screen. And people like Akamai, who got out there early and they put computers all in the far reaches of the globe, so they're sending it in, and that's kind of the backbone that a lot of these webcasts are going through. There's people like OnStream. There's a lot of vendors who are focused on that. The Skype, the Juice guys, they're focusing on a peer-to-peer solution to that. And there's going to be some hybrid that develops. This whole Web 2.0 will be some combination of that with peer-to-peer, and we don't know exactly where that's going to fall out. But once they do that, then yes, you will be able to get your content at a size and at a response time that's acceptable.
Right. What I thought was interesting about Juice is that it's tailored to your preferences.
Right.
So your preferences is very valuable. Can we put a mic, please?
Yeah. And then I think we're going to have to take one last one.
Yeah. Sorry. So the concept of Juice is pretty valuable because it's tailored to your preferences.
Yeah.
And campaigns and grassroots organizations, that is very valuable data. Who really is controlling that data of what are your preferences and is it being used at all?
So I think the campaigns are going to, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I mean, the campaigns will need to generate their own data there. And I think part of that is using, whether it's search engine optimization to, what we're calling tags here today, but which really is the whole basis for the, what Google's doing, which is how to find things on the internet. They have spiders that go out and crawl all the websites so they know where everything is, then you find that information. So being able as a campaign to take that technology and use that to target, I mean, yeah, that's the key for you guys.
All right, we got to go to the last one here, but we'll get it right here. You got it, and then it's been a great discussion. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to second that. This has been an incredible discussion. Thank you guys so much for this. Notice that there are now 1 million videos being uploaded on YouTube every day, and which means an inundation of new data for people to sift through and try to find what's interesting to them, which means a crowded media environment. And I wanted to ask you guys, what do you guys see as strategies for promoting your videos on YouTube, online and offline, to ensure that what you have and what's valuable gets out there and gets viewed?
Well, I guess I'm the one to answer that one.
This is a good final comment for everybody, maybe.
Yeah, I think that it's just like there's 1 million press releases sent out every day. Now there's 1 million videos. You have to really have good relationships with bloggers. You have to have the video be targeted so it'll appeal to certain people. So it's definitely a challenge. So you're changing now to an earned media environment where you're gonna have to do something where people are interested in it and have connections. And if you have a list of people you can email it out to, a bigger list to get them to start watching it, encouraging them to share with their friends, it'll bubble up. But there's no easy answer for it. You could put out a great video and it could bomb, or somebody could randomly just talk into a camera, say something funny, and it could be the next sensation.
The practical answer to that on YouTube is get as many of your friends as possible to rate it, get as many friends as possible to link it, to comment on it. I mean, as you know, especially certain times of the week, it can actually bubble up pretty quickly that way. But maybe one of the meta answers to that, the cynical one, well, the positive one is that the fills are the future. I mean, this guy just leapfrogged over, he might have had to toil 10 years before getting that promotion he just got through what probably is probably the most famous political web video to date. Or, you know, to put it another way, to take the negative view, when I was, I took a course, couple-day course out in California in 2000. John Waters, the director of Pink Flamingos and so forth, he was asked, well, what do you think of digital video? What is this going to mean? He says, well, it's great because it means you have to buy my movies all over again in a new format. And he said, but mostly it just means there's a whole lot more crap out there. But there is, in the midst of all that crap, having good stuff, getting it linked to, getting it rated, it's going to bubble up the way Bill's did.
You guys have a comment on that? I just think if you're running a campaign or anything of that nature, that it's all part of one small thing, which is e-marketing. You know, you actually need to drive that traffic, and so it's going to be traditional media, it's going to be print, it's going to be your website, it's going to be phone calls. All that stuff kind of needs to focus the energy in one place, and if that place is the website, which is then publishing on YouTube, you know, then you got this symbiotic relationship going on there, and it's really how do you focus the traffic, and that's the answer.
For us, it's certainly, I think bloggers are the best resource for garnering links because they already have audiences that they have relationships with. So when, you know, front page bloggers on Coast or on any major blogger, even local blogs, we had a hearing on Katrina. It was a subcommittee hearing on Katrina funding, and a local New Orleans blog posted it, and you know, because it's of interest. And so developing the relationships with bloggers and then utilizing their audience, I think, is our biggest draw.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a great time. If you want to see more information, it's newpolitics.net.